Sonic Talk.
Hello everybody, welcome to Sonic Talk episode 584. This is kind of, it's been delayed by a week because last week we decided to just take a quick break because lots of people are busy and doing stuff, and we figured it was a bit impromptu of a break as well. So I hope you weren't too bereft of your fix of Sonic Talk. Sonic Talk, of course, is a music technology podcast, a weekly show. We talk, or mostly weekly, apart from last week, where we talk about music technology, we talk about software, we talk about synthesizers, electronic instruments, modular synthesis, controllerism, live production, anything to do with all of that stuff. So sit back and enjoy. We've got a couple of guests this week, and also want to point out we've also got a sponsor in terms of you can win a copy of Neutron 3 Advanced, I might say. We're looking for, so I won't, I better not do that. I'm going to save that till later, although you're going to probably see that now. There will be a competition where you can win a copy of Neutron 3 Advanced. Thank you to our friends for letting us do that. Anyway, let's say hello to everybody in the chat room. We've got our YouTube chatties. Remember, if you subscribe to the channel, you should get a notification when we go live. We often go live sort of 20 minutes beforehand, so it gives you time to grab a cup of tea, tell your boss you're working on something not to be disturbed, or however you do it. And we've also got IRC links at sonicstate.com/live. So let's say hello to our guests. Well, let's start with Mr. Matthew Hodson, because we haven't seen him for ages. Matt has been, he's an educator working in Brighton at BIMS, and of course this time of year you're probably evaluating all your students' creative output. So every week it's been, I'm in what do they call them? Evaluation meetings, or I don't know.
Exam boards. Exam boards, essentially. So yeah, we look at all the student grades and sign them off, essentially. So actually this Friday, they all go out to the students, so they'll all know what they've got. So yeah, I've been busy doing that, amongst other things. Played a gig last Saturday at the Brighton Modular Festival here in Brighton, which was excellent. And big shout out to everyone who put all that on, for the Brighton Modular Session crew as well. That was really good. I just did a hard kind of modular techno set there. So been busy with that. Also, I'm in the middle of packing up my studio. You can't see, but the other side of the camera is basically cables and all my equipment, basically, which is all starting to get packed up and put into boxes and things like that for a studio move. So you can imagine what that's like with cabling and all that kind of thing. Yeah. I don't know if are you a bit like me? Have you got a box of cables that you've kept since you was about 15 and they're just like old computer cables that you're never going to use, but you think, I'll just hang on to them just in case? Have you got one of those boxes?
I've got several. What? In fact, they're the places. That's when you go to car boot sales. I always gravitate towards the people who've got one of those, because I think, they might have some other knickknacks in there and stuff that might be really useful. So yeah, I would agree. Yeah, that is just one of those things. I hate to think how many, lots of other people have. I mean, I used to have like about 30 or 40 foot of 24-way multi-core in the attic as well, because I didn't want to throw it away. It's just like, no way, man, I can't, which were tails that went from, we used to have a 3M 24 track in the studio, and I couldn't bring myself to chuck that stuff away. But it weighed an absolute ton. So yeah, I think I did sell it to somebody, or gave it to somebody in the end who had a need. So
yeah, I'm trying to be ruthless and chuck out stuff I'm just not using. I've got a pile over there of about 30 USB cables that I'm just not using, so it's like, anyone need a USB cable, let me know, I'll just post it out to you, basically.
USB by post? Yeah,
USB by post. Just going to be selling like a few foot pedals and just various bits that I just haven't turned on for a while. I think it's good sometimes when you have a bit of a declutter and you just kind of downsize a little bit. Sometimes can be inspiring to work with a smaller amount of equipment anyway. And I'm finding I'm pretty much stuck in this world more than anything at the moment. So yeah, just downsizing and reorganizing and all that kind of thing.
Well, perhaps we'll get onto that a little bit later, because a couple of our topics are kind of linked to all of that business. And we also say hello to Mr. Yoad Nevo, who is there in his facility. I imagine, now, if we're talking about a box of cables, I imagine you've probably got like garages full of them at the outskirts of London in your sort of storage facilities.
I have quite a few, and today my assistant and I, Joel, we're going through another box of cable that was left from the move. Every time another one emerges, And as we were going through the cables, we both said, "Oh, this could be handy. Oh, this could be handy." And I told him that's how you get to have so many boxes full of like old USB connectors and kind of things that serial cables and God knows what that maybe one day will become useful for something. I don't know what.
Yeah, well, I know what you mean. I'm the same. I've got like S-video stuff. I should point out Johan Nevo, of course, producer, mixer. There he is in his facility in London. Also works with Waves, developing plugins for them too. So, and I forgot to say Matt Hodson, of course, maths artist, maths.com. So check that out because he's on a roll at the moment. So, yeah, I mean, for summer, I mean, another reason we didn't have a show last week is because at this time of year, it's sometimes hard to find topics. And it seems to be everybody now really tries to hit the sweet spots during the year, you know, so you get the spring and then from September onwards up to Christmas, and it's usually July, August months, maybe end of June, you know, people tend to sort of think, nah, you get software sales, that's kind of it a lot. But we've managed to bring some topics together, and two of them are kind of linked to what you were talking about, Matt. So if I start with this one.
Hello, and welcome to another Sonic Lab.
This is a bit meta,
we've got
obviously.
Another visit from Simon Stokes from Schugle Studios in Glasgow, who's an Ableton certified trainer. You might remember Simon very kindly came down and showed us the wavetable synthesizer, which was the sort of last big point release, wasn't it, with Ableton Live?
That's right.
And now with 10.1, there's a new CVTools pack, which is, what is that exactly?
It's coming out soon. It's a pack of Max for Live devices, which basically let you integrate your modular or other analog hardware with your live setup.
Right. Yeah, I think I'll cut there because that felt like a pretty good summary. Obviously, you need this is a free pack, Max for Live, and what's really interesting about it is it integrates very tightly. I mean, it feels like they are Max for Live devices, so you need Suite, but it feels like they're just regular devices. In fact, I guess they could have been really. I mean, if they get to the point where you can compile Max and just have it run as a runtime thing rather, which I suppose that's what they've done in Ableton Live. But it enables you, if you've got a DC coupled interface, to you calibrate to, you know, there's been a lot about it, but it's been sort of trailed for a while and now it's out and it's free, and it really does make a huge difference to the way that you can integrate with modular. And it's a very interesting. It's not new because we've seen it with the Silent Way, and I can't remember, there was Motu many moons ago. We're talking probably 15, 20 years ago. They
had a product.
I can't remember what it was called, but we had it, and it was massively CPU heavy, but it would do the same thing. DC coupled outputs, because Motu have had DC coupled outputs on there. Can you remember what it was called? I really can't remember.
No, I can't. But I really wanted to get one, but then I didn't for some reason. So maybe now is the time to go. To take that route,
Yeah,
you know,
well,
when everything, all the devices are more compatible and the hosts are more kind of open to things like that.
It's actually still quite. I mean, there are still, you know, lots of interfaces that come out. We saw the recent Focusrite Scarlett Mark IIIs or version 3s, which are focusing on they're kind of like increasing the specifications of the ins and outs. They're not DC coupled, but so you'd have to use it with something like a Silent Way. So and I was talking to the guys at Presonus because they've got these big. Was it or maybe it's RME? It might have been RME actually. They've got these really big. Interfaces which they don't have DC coupled inputs and outputs, because I think inputs is harder because you need to filter to protect the mic pre. So if you're on Class A's, you don't want to be putting control voltages into them because it can. So it's not as easy as all of that. Well, if I come to you first, Matt, because or second or next even. I mean, I'm guessing you're in that world, aren't you? Are you using DC coupled outputs and integrating into your modular stuff?
So the way I've been using it recently, I've got the Expert Sleepers, you mentioned these, the FH2 interface, which allows you it's got a micro USB input, or USB-C rather, and that I've got an expander on that, which gives me 16 in total triggers or CVs or LFOs or whatever, and it's very small. So I'm basically sending all that information over USB, and it works brilliantly. The other way I'm using it is with the Percussor SSP. I don't know if you can see that, my microphone's in the way a little bit.
Yeah, well, you've been doing a series on that. You're a kind of what an endorsee. I would say perhaps a product specialist there. Well,
yeah, I've been enjoying it, and actually, I'm just 7 o'clock tonight. I'm doing another video on this where I'm actually looking at how this becomes a USB audio interface. which you can stream audio to and from it. It becomes a sound card as well. But I'm in the video, I'm actually showing how I'm using CVTools with this all via USB. So what's quite interesting is these are DC coupled inputs and outputs. So I'm actually able to send stuff into that and then back out of that into other places in the modular. So I've got a ton of ins and outs that I'm using if I want to use the percussor and the FH2. But that's how I'm working. I don't have a DC coupled sound card as such, except for the SSP. I don't have a Focusrite, and everything else is in a box at the minute. So I'm using it like that. But I have to say that the whole kind of integration thing is brilliant. You hit the nail on the head. The fact that they've made these look like Ableton plugins is great. From my point of view, being someone who grew up using Max MSP, I'd love to be able to open these up like you would do with a normal Max for Live plugin and start pulling them apart, and injecting a bit of stuff in there that I'd want them to do. I mean, it comes with you've got the instrument, you've got triggers, you've got utilities, you've got clocks. Everything seems to be pretty tight. I've ran stuff for a long time using all the clocks and the triggers, and everything seems to be as tight as possible. Well, certainly tight enough for me anyway, for what I'm doing and what have you. So in terms of that actual syncing a DAW up with the hardware or vice versa, actually is working better than ever. And I remember maybe 5 or 6 years ago, this was still a real struggle just to get software and modular clocks, as tight as you can get them, basically. Particularly if you're using maybe drums, you might just be using a kick drum or something from inside Bitwig or Ableton or Logic or whatever. To have that synced up nice and tightly with your hardware was it was never right. It was never quite right, but this is as tight as it's got for me. I think this is a real cool step forward. And it being a free upgrade, happy days, hats off to them. Done a good job here.
It's a really smart. I mean, it's really interesting as well. The only thing I would say about it is I would really like to be able to say if you've got a multi-port audio interface or an aggregate, you just say, CVTools will always go to these, and you don't have to then go external outputs and then select the addition. Yeah, that would be nice. But one thing that's really cool about it is you can put all of these things on a single track and then have them addressing individual separate hardware outputs from within that track, which is. So you could have a CVTools only track, I guess, and have it's really interesting.
I didn't realise that at first, and I had multiple tracks open, one for each kind of instrument, and then it dawned on me, actually, all these can go in one track, save up a load of space, and just route them out to the various outputs. Yeah. And sometimes I got a little bit confused as well, because I might have accidentally sent CV triggers out of an audio output, and then suddenly you can hear the audible triggering and clicks and CV voltage that's being sent, which sounded a bit sort of glitchy and things like that, but it could also
mind your speakers.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, totally.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. So, I mean, I know you're not. You do have some modular stuff, and I know you use it for kind of processing. I mean, is there? I'm sure we've talked about this before. I mean, is there a point at which integration brings it into your more regular everyday workflow?
Absolutely. Yeah. At the end of the day, we sit in front of a screen with a mouse, and that's I'm quite used to that. I'm happy doing that, especially for stuff which allows you, which you need a timeline for, and that's the only way to do it. You can have all the step sequences and all that, but sometimes you need to arrange stuff and not having it just running in loops and things like that. And if you try to modulate the steps and stuff like that, it starts to become quite random. And if you want absolute control over the arrange and you want to use stuff which spans across the whole track rather than just loops that you sample and slot in, then definitely the screen is the best solution for those things. And I think it's great seeing those two worlds integrate and become a kind of a more transparent way of working with it. Obviously, you still have the option, and I think I have a few modules like that will receive MIDI and convert it to controller. Control data and receive it and convert it to CV and gates. So that's quite handy too. And I've even started. I have this module. I don't remember who by, which allows you to have 12 different clock outputs from like the first 12 MIDI channels, and what I thought of doing is programming in Logic, like in the default song or the template song, tracks which are hidden, but one is set to quarter notes, half notes, and so forth, like 12 divisions, including triplets and what have you. And they just run all the time, and then you pick from the 12 outputs on the actual module, you pick the ones that you want, and then you can trigger envelopes and things like that. So for which is, for what I'm not doing with it, it's enough. You know what I mean? Because I just don't have the time to mess with it. And I recently got the Matrix Brute, which makes it even more simple, because you just have 16 destinations that you can feed to the rest of the system and stuff like that. By the way, I haven't tried the software, because they have a software that comes with the Matrix Brute, and I'm sure it allows you for some editing and
configuration.
Configuration. I just never got to it really. But kind of.
Why would you?
Following
it's such a hands-on
exactly.
thing. I mean, you just kind of, I want it to make the sound. Okay, there I am. I don't need to worry about all the rest of that stuff necessarily. So yeah.
Yeah,
well, I think...
and yeah, go on.
Oh no, sorry, Johan. I was just going to say, just picking up on the point you made, is it's kind of just got to work out the box. It's got to, when you don't have a lot of time to kind of experiment with stuff like this, it's and we're all working to strict deadlines on various things. These things have just got to work out the box, and that was, I think, the thing for me about this was within 5 minutes I had multiple voices flying around the place and multiple clocks, and it was really straightforward. So yeah, sorry, I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, I know, I agree, and I think that's the thing. I mean, that's why, because it was originally supposed to come out a little bit earlier, and then there were just a few things that needed tweaking. Incidentally, that video that we shot there with Simon Stokes, when he came down, he was working with a beta that did have a couple of things that were quite. It was quite a difficult session, just purely because things weren't working quite as well. So it's good, and I for one, I'm sort of pleased that they did sort of go, you know what, we're just going to hold off until it's right and then do it, and that makes a lot of sense. So yeah, good stuff. It's certainly a very interesting piece of software. And in many ways, all of these things have been available to be done with Max for Live devices before. I'm trying to remember who they collaborated with, because they collaborated with the artists who brought it all together. So it's the idea of just bringing it all into one place and making it work out. CVTools, who was
it? Skinnerbox.
Skinnerbox, that's right. Good.
Was it them?
Call.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. So I mean. So yeah, I just think and the thing that's really cool about it is the fact that you can calibrate. So you send it out. Each of the CV instrument has an input and an output, and it analyzes the input. So you can send it out and get it to scale your wonky oscillator or your
that alone. Yeah, that alone is worth having the system installed, because when I work with the Minimoog or the MS10 or the SH. 303. What else have I got? Mini Brute has MIDI. You want to basically, you have to decide whether you want to play in this range and then set the tuning, or if you dare open the Minimoog and set the tracking, or on the what's it called? The MIDI to CV interface.
The Kenton,
the Kenton one. But if you can do it automatically in an automatic process via software, which is more accurate, and you can calibrate it before you record, that's amazing.
Yeah, it really, that's
really
the thing.
amazing.
I mean, because you can get a much wider range out of things that don't
Yeah,
traditionally
absolutely.
work very well
Absolutely.
that way. Yeah. So yeah, that can't be overestimated. That's and that again, that's available in a Silent Way and in the Motu thing. I wish I could remember what the Motu thing was. Chat room, do you remember what the Motu software was for controlling it? 'Cause it was out years ago. I mean, it's been out for 15 years probably.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if it's still out, but yeah. Very cool. Okay. Well, maybe what I'll do now is quickly just take a quick break, and we can have a word from our friends over at Isotope. Then we can do the competition.
Presenting Neutron 3, the modern way to mix. Bring your workflow into the 21st century with 8 modern mixing tools, all at your fingertips in one mothership plugin. Starting a mix can take a while, but with the all-new Mix Assistant, Neutron can listen to your audio and quickly suggest a custom starting point for an individual track, or set levels for your entire mix. Shape sounds like never before with the new Sculptor module. Match audio to a target sonic profile and instantly sculpt it to sound more like itself, or like something else completely. Reach out and touch your audio with Neutron's immersive controls and visualizations. Neutron 3 comes equipped with Visual Mixer, a tool to help you effortlessly manipulate the landscape of your mix. Neutron 3, the modern way to mix.
And of course, you can get your hands on this. Just head over to isotope.com and you can download the demo, which is essentially, what is it? It's 10 days usually, their stuff. So yeah, you should be able to get hold of that. Anyway, we've got a competition. So this week we're looking for the hashtag track enhance and the hashtag Neutron 3. And it's a Twitter competition, so you just tweet those words, track enhance, that's one word, and track and Neutron 3, the number 3, to @Sonicstate and @Isotope Inc. And then our supercomputer search algorithm will collect all the entries up and pick a random winner. And this week's winner, or last week's winner, or the week before's winner, is somebody called Rob X Loxley, who has just put "want to win modern mixing." And so yes, Robin, you have won. So congratulations. You want to get in touch? Just let us know. Yeah, that's not you, is it?
It's not. No, I just celebrating on his behalf. Just well done.
Excellent. Phew. I'm sure there probably should be some T&Cs, but that's not allowed to happen. I don't think it ever has, fortunately. But yeah, I'm moving on quickly again because we've also got the Bitwig thing, which we're talking about. And welcome to Sonic Lab Special. We're very lucky to fast forward this a bit. Look, and this is the Bitwig version 3, which has got the grid.
So if we were trying to deconstruct this a little.
So Bitwig 3. Ever since Bitwig first came out, it was, new DAW on the block is always going to struggle to kind of get some traction. And the Bitwig way was very unique and interesting because it sort of melds clip launching, which is more of an Ableton thing, with the sort of NLE kind of timeline approach. But underneath was always the grid, but they've only now in version 3 they've actually made this public facing, and it's got something like 154 modules of CV control, all kinds of stuff to build synths, effects, whatnot. And if you've got a DC coupled interface, you can output that stuff as control voltage as well, which is also very cool. So there's yet another way of doing this. And I know I'm going to come to you, actually that's Yoad, but I'm going to come to you first, Matt, because I know you've been working a little bit in this. And have you got some history with Bitwig, or have you just sort of picked it up and thought, I'm going to try this out?
Just literally picked it up. I have to admit, I haven't been in the Bitwig world at all, and I've only just hit it. And I think maybe the introduction of the grid was the thing for me that just made me think, right, I need to get into this really. Having been someone who worked in the modular world for a while, and also with Max for Live, Max MSP back when I was at university. This really, for me, when I saw what they were doing with this, was kind of like, okay, this is kind of bringing it all together in a one-stop shop. Anyone who is now, at a young age, wanting to get into and understanding building their own synthesizers, drum, I suppose you can build your own drum voices and things like that. Of course you can. And understanding signal flow and envelopes and wave shaping and scaling and quantizing. Without having to get into any coding or third-party plugins or bringing together 2 or 3 different pieces of software to do it, it's all here now. And I was literally playing around with this morning. I did a short video on my Instagram this morning, just a minute or so just playing around with some simple voices and a filter, an envelope, and then I started using this was really interesting. I was basically combining several pitch sequences coming into one oscillator and kind of flicking between them using probability and random and that, and it was all quantized to the same scale. And it was just a really interesting way of coming up with melodies rather than just clicking in and just coming up with a melody. It was kind of like setting off multiple things and just hitting play and letting them go, and then capturing that and finding interesting bits from that. And it's something that I do in the hardware world quite a lot. And I was able to do it so quickly. The oscillators sounded really good. There's a swarm oscillator in there as well, which is really great. There's different kinds of filters, quantizers for pitch quantizing, LFOs, of course. But then you've got data stuff like gates and probability, and it's all synced, but you can actually then introduce different clocks and have things running off multiples of different clocks. I had this rocking. I had so much going on in the screen. I was expecting my computer to start crackling and falling over, but it handled it really well. It kind of feels quite lightweight in terms of the processing, but it also sounds really, really good. So I'm really, really looking forward to spending some more time with this, actually.
Interesting.
In fact, it does the CV, the CV output as well. And sending this out into this world is, again, it's just like, I'm just going to have an excellent summer, I think, and Christmas playing around with all of this.
A Studio Tan. Matt, something that people are asking, have you got a fan on in your room? It sounds like there's a piece of cards sort of ticking on one of the blades. I don't want you to overheat yourself.
No, but I can turn it off.
No, I don't know. I feel bad about that.
Let me just turn it down a little bit.
All right.
I'll turn it down a little.
So I mean, this, this is a really interesting concept. I mean, this version 3 is all about the grid and the whole concept of this sort of bringing all this sound design into the front. And it's really starting to blur the lines between the concept. I mean, you get lots of free instruments and whatnot with DAWs generally, but this is a kind of build your own concept at quite a high level. It's quite fascinating for maybe prototyping and whatnot.
And that brings me to another question. If I was starting today and I was looking for a DAW, and what would you choose, Ableton or Bitwig? It seems like they both have the same kind of session view and all that, and the clip launcher in Bitwig, which is amazing, and now this plus it transmits everything across to the outside world as CV and gates and all that. This is definitely something that opens up the guts of the software and lets you in a similar way to Reactor. But now it's integrated within your host, and you don't have to. It's not a plugin. It works. It's very, very interesting. Again, something that I work on Ableton, but my main platform is Logic and Pro Tools and Cubase, actually, because I love it. I do most of my work in Logic, but I do work in Ableton. I haven't really dived into Bitwig, but I think that, again, it's a matter of time.
Yeah, well, that's
or
the thing
free
with all
time,
these,
really.
Yeah.
If I had time now, I would start a project on Bitwig, just go in and I think it's a really nice approach, and that's how things should be, and it seems like they've done it in a very slick, and because in Logic you have all those things like the drummer and this and that, and it's just kind of packed EXS patches and things like that, and you feel that it's not being done from the ground up, if you know what I mean. It's just right. a very high level kind of packing and presenting it to the user in a simplified way. But the way Bitwig are doing it is they really let you go in. And if I can refer to what Matt was saying about being surprised that it didn't fall apart. It didn't fall apart. Sometimes in a single plugin, you have things which are hundreds of times more sophisticated, and you run stuff all the time. So things like that happen. If you think about any VST synth, let alone something like Massive X, there's so much stuff going inside, like flow motion element, some of the stuff that we did. There's so much going on, and so many different clocks and things, and multiple like polyphonic envelopes and polyphonic LFOs, and which have to be summed and divided, and there's so much of that stuff going on anyway. And the computer is quite capable, and if the program is written well, it will do it easily. But yeah, that's very, very interesting, and again, it brings the two worlds closer together. The world of the modular environment. It's not a modular synth. It's an environment, because it's a part of your whole kind of interface with the program, like the running audio, recording, processing it through stuff. Really,
it's
really
really
great.
yeah. One thing that's cool, because of the way that you can route all these modular. I mean, I don't know if this is true, but it's gone past me now in the chat room. But somebody was saying what's really surprising is the whole thing's built in Java, which means it's multi-platform. So when they build the latest version with all the features, it's parity across Windows, OS X, and Linux. I don't know what flavor of Linux. And that's the other thing that's kind of cool as well. The fact that you can they could build it and it just goes out on parity across everything. Obviously, there are certain limitations with those OSs that require, certain plugins won't work on one and won't work on another. But there aren't many that do all of that. And that's the thing that they've been doing from the very beginning. And it feels like they're really starting to get momentum and these sort of killer features. And it's just, I think you're right as well. It's like, would you, again, it's what would make you jump? What would make you do that? I mean, I know for you, Howard, it's time, because you can't necessarily just sort of take a couple of days out, or probably way longer, to be fair, to kind of get to know something like that. I mean, the same, I guess, with you, Matt. The thing is, though, this is the sort of thing that if this starts to creep into education, then you will have to learn it, because your students will want to know how to use it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's taken some really big steps, I think, Bitwig in the last few years, and hats off to them. So we're definitely going to look at introducing it some more. In fact, I've been on the phone to them this week. We had a little chat about them coming down to do some stuff down at BIM and talk about the software. But going back to that idea about making the jump, I mean, I was a Logic user through and through for many, many years. And it was only really why I jumped to Ableton was because when I started out playing live, and I wanted to use Ableton just because it offers that way of using audio in a non-linear way. So playing live for me was not about pressing play and just pretending you're doing stuff on your laptop, but it was about MIDI integration and breaking up the song into different parts on the fly. So I spent so long bouncing stuff out of Logic and putting it into Ableton just to go out and play live. For me, then I started to just basically produce inside of Ableton. And then when I needed to go out and play live, it was already there, and it was all ready for me to start manipulating on the fly and reordering and essentially reworking whenever I wanted to play. And I guess you can do that with Bitwig, because you've got that similar sort of clip view that Ableton has as well. And now with this in there, I remember Reactor Blocks came out, and that really excited me, and that sits nicely within any DAW. So I guess you've got a lot of this elements in there. But what's really great?
Yeah, VCV rack as well, of course, you got, which is
VCV rack. Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I was just looking on here is the ability to bring tracks in from the arrangement page into the grid page here. So you could, for example, sidechain something from another synth or an input or a kick drum track within the grid environment as well. So like Yoad says, this isn't just a modular synth. It's an environment. It's part of the actual program. It can be part of the arrangement. It can be part of the composition, as well as the the drums, the sounds, the timbre, and all those kind of things. It can also be really wicked effects unit as well. I mean, the delays in here are really great as well. And I don't know if you know this, but if you've got any VSTs installed, they just fit straight into the grid here as well. You can just insert them wherever you like within the signal path as well.
Yeah.
So you can just
stop.
Yeah,
it's too much. I mean, there is an element of, it's not, maybe it's not for the faint-hearted. It's for the inquiring mind. So yeah, I mean, perhaps as a beginner, presumably you could use it, because I don't know it all that well. But perhaps we should pause there. The possibilities are endless, but it's well worth checking out. I don't know what the demo situation is on that, but it's probably worth having a look. Let's see what other stuff we've got going on in the. I'm going to go to the Abbey Road thing, and then we go back to just because I was quite curious because I'm sure Johan has some input on this. This is the new.
Hey,
Waves
I'm Yoni, product manager at Waves Audio.
plugin.
In this video, I want to introduce you to the Abbey Road Studio 3 plugin. This plugin brings the control room of Studio 3 to your headphones. It allows you to monitor in both stereo and surround as if you were sitting in the sweet spot of Studio 3, giving you the precise three-dimensional, well-balanced acoustic spatial image on headphones. This way you can produce and mix music on your headphones with more confidence and comfort in a good studio monitoring environment.
Right, I'm going to summarise here because that's the sort of main marketing thing. But this is a really cool idea because we've seen, convolution reverbs and modelling of spaces, and we've had mic modelling and certain amount of speaker modelling. I don't know if I've come across control room modelling where you've got, you could be listening on the bigs, the mediums, or the near fields, and this works with the NX head tracking. So if you've got that on your headphones, the movement information is also thrown in, so you get that realism. I really like to try this, but I'm curious as to. I'm guessing have you tried this, Johan? I mean, how does it translate?
Yeah, obviously I was involved with this. Involved with this project. We started NX quite a few years back, and the modeling was based on mathematical properties of spaces and rooms, and now we've actually sampled or measured the actual characteristics of the sound coming out of the three sets of speakers at Abbey Road Studio 3, and it really gives you that sensation of space, basically, because for me, mixing on headphones, the main thing is the positioning of the tracks. Because when you sit in front of speakers, then the left speaker will be here. It will be physically here, and that's where you'll be hearing the sound from. But if you wear headphones and you pan it hard left, then you will hear it from here, and that's quite a big difference. And when you try to mix on headphones, for what I found, and we experimented a lot during the process of making this product and the original NX, about the differences of and for me it's mainly the position, because you can get the coloring right. If you know your headphones, then you can dial in the bass drum parameter so it sounds beefy, and if you know the low end well enough, it will work. So the sound is fine and the balance is kind of okay as well, but it's the positioning. And this thing just kind of helps you to better understand the positioning and the sensation you get when you're in front of speakers, rather than just on headphones, which are very kind of dry and direct. So it gives it a little bit of life, and yeah, it's quite interesting. I wouldn't say that basically, your eyes also play an effect in this process, because we receive signals through our vision that work together with the sound that we're hearing, and those minute movements of the head, and that's why we have the head tracker, because even when you think you're not moving, you actually, your skull moves a tiny bit all the time, and that gives you fresh cues from your environment, from the speakers, but then it has to kind of sync to what you're looking at as well. So if you're sitting in an office cubicle or something like that, you wouldn't feel like you're in Abbey Road Studio 3 because your eyes won't let you get that. Maybe if you close your eyes, it will be a lot closer, and you really
because you're not getting the same.
You know what I mean? But what it does do, it kind of gives you that sound. So if you can really get immersed in that experience, basically, if you want to be negative about it, then you can say, well, it's just a bunch of early reflection added to the sound and some fancy panning, that follows you. But there's a lot more to it than that, because when you sit at Abbey Road in the studio in front of the speakers and you take the headphones and you compare it to the sound of the speakers and you're there, it does sound very, very close.
Wow.
And the difference between the three sets of speakers is very prominent, but in a way that really, so you would
can
like
reveal things, can't it? Yeah.
Put it on a biggies and EQ your kick drum, and then when you work on the balance, maybe you'll put it on the PMC and monitor more quietly, and it really gives you that sensation. It's something that kind of, for me, it's something that augments the experience of listening or mixing on headphones.
Yeah, I guess for a lot of people they have to. I mean, I don't do so much of that. I actually would really like to try this out actually with the NX and see just how it works, because I agree that sort of visual cue is going to make a really big difference. It's interesting. Have you tried any? Because there have been room simulators and room correction things, which is, I guess they fall in a similar category. It's not quite the same thing. Have you tried any of that sort of stuff?
Yeah, I tried quite a lot of the room correction stuff in here as well. I put way too much things on the wall to dampen down the frequencies. And I'm about to move. My new studio is going to be in what was an old school hall stroke church, and it's very open plan. Yeah, it's going to be very reflective. Well, it's going to be very open plan, but the walls are quite far away. So in terms of the reflections, they're going to be very late reflections, those that are coming back. And they're going to be, the amplitude of them is going to be quite low, but it's still going to be there. So it's going to be interesting for me, because I think I'm going to have to lean to using headphones just for checking reverbs and things like that. Having said that, I'm quite heavy-handed with reverbs. For me, you can never have too much reverb or delay, and just big fan of that. But I'd certainly like to try this out. Having been in that studio myself a couple of times, I just know what an excellent experience it is, and how different it is as an experience when your approach to mixing and using your ears it can be. So if this is something that you can bring it into your room or wherever you are, then certainly I think this is definitely worth a try out. It's crazy though, isn't it? All this the technology that they're in.
Yeah, it's bonkers. I had a question for you, Ad. So you're kind of involved deeply in the technology. Have you done the thing where you've had your own room translated and scanned, so that when you're maybe in Tel Aviv or at home or whatever, and you have to check a mix, you can listen to it effectively in your room on headphones? So
far, the technology still requires a lot of measurements, a lot of processing to the data, a lot of tweaking. So it's not something that we can do automatically.
Right.
We started with Abbey Road Studio 3. You never know where it's going to end. The other thing I would mention though is the ability to listen to surround content in your headphones. And it's not only that, it's the surround, it's what you hear from the Nautilus 5.1 and 7.1 setup have in Studio 3. So basically, you can sit on the train and watch a movie, a film in surround with your headphones. So that's
That's with the NX system, right? Is that?
that's with the NX, yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and that for me is a big thing because
Yeah, well, we've been there, haven't we? Everybody spends all this time doing surround mixes, and then nobody ever listens to them.
Yeah,
it's kind of like feels like wasted time.
Absolutely. But there's so much content in surround, so all the films, all the and a lot of music, and it really sounds amazing because with the surround stuff, it's actually easier for you to get lost in this space because you hear stuff and you kind of really get the feel of, and obviously you can hear the choppers going from front to back and all that, which is quite amazing. If you think about it, our ears we have just two, and still we get surround information from our environment. So basically, all NX does is to mimic that and to send the right information, including the
reflections and stuff,
the reflection, the structure of your ear, and for best results, you should do a head measurement and feed it to the plugin so it will better adjust to the size of your head, because that matters as well. Yeah.
So are there, I'm not familiar with it, so are there profiles for particular headphones? I mean, is there an optimum headphone to use with a system like that?
There's some profiles which kind of help to the frequency response of certain headphones, not too many because there's so many modules and you'll be doing it forever. But that's not the point. The point is that any phones that you know and that you like will sound the same, but it will just give it a sense of space, which you don't get from headphones. That's all it does.
Interesting. Does it work with buds as well?
Yeah. I'm more used to earbuds because that's what I listen to. That's what I have on my phone, and I'm quite used to that. And I like when it kind of locks and you can really hear the low end, and that's the only way that for me personally that I have we have like really good headphones obviously, and we try it on all of them. There's something about the headroom and the dynamic range and all that with big headphones, big expensive headphones, but there's something about earbuds that is just that kind of that goes straight into your head, and then for me the NX does a really good job with that, because it just
how do you use NX with earbuds? Do you have to wear a kind of like a thing on the top of your head?
First of all, I suppose. Well, I mean, you can still use your webcam because it will work. The thing is that the webcam's refresh rate is not sufficient. I mean, it works, and it does. There's slight latency which the actual Bluetooth device solves. Okay. But you don't have to use it because the camera will recognize the webcam. The algorithm will still use the webcam to recognize your face and your movements. It's just the refresh rate that is not as quick.
I'm going to have to talk to you about getting hold of this for review, because I'd really like to experience it. I feel like I'm missing out on the latest in this sort of technology. So
I think it can be arranged.
It can be arranged. That's awesome. Okay. Gosh, that led to an interesting. So, I mean, the idea of this. I mean, obviously, the measurement and whatnot is incredibly. It's a bit like doing these sort of beautifully modelled. Well, probably way more complex actually than doing convolutions of famous and well-known spaces, because you've got all these other factors to throw. So I suppose it's not going to necessarily work. But I suppose this ties in. We've just got time to maybe tie it in with the new Kemper updates, because I think this is really fascinating as well. So this is the Kemper profiling amplifier, which has now had a load of reverbs added to it, because essentially it is a DSP box. So now you can use this for these. I mean, this isn't guitar stuff. This is just presumably just processing other audio through the Kemper profiling amp with ionosphere and formant reverbs with the Profiler OS 6. And these have been out for a while, but obviously the DSP on board. Oh, that sounds nice. The the DSP on board is sufficient to drive some of these amazing algorithms as well. So that's just come out. But the reason I brought this up is really because it's repurposing the hardware. Of those of you perhaps aren't familiar with the original Kemper profiling amplifier, it is essentially a box which you create. I think they're convolution models, so you can convolution record your broken old amp or your mate's fantastic whatever, and there are loads that are available, and load them in, and they became the sort of de facto standard. I mean, loads of people in America, it went really big. Lots and lots of studios have them because it means they don't have to run all these hot valve amps. They can record them, and then use them and recreate those sounds on stage. And it's very powerful. So primarily aimed at guitarists, but this is now starting to bring it into the concept of using it for just outboard DSP, where you just run it as you. Yoad, I mean, you've got a commercial facility. Do you have something like a Kemper in your place? I mean, is the sort of thing that's expected of having a commercial facility?
No, but I do have a virus, which was made by the same.
Yes, that's true.
By the same guy. And back in the day when it came out, I used to use it. I used to record guitar through it, through the A to D and everything. It just sounded amazing. The delay and the chorus, I used to love it. And the filter, so I used to use it a lot. Kemper is great, and yeah, I mean the demo sounds great. I haven't looked at it. I don't really know what it can actually do. It sounds like there's a lot of pitching going on, and all that. But I'm sure whatever he did, it's done well. Because I sorry I forgot his name, but everything he does is just amazing.
Yeah, I know. I would agree with that. I think the interesting fact here is this sort of transition from a traditional guitar processor into just a general processor. I mean, you're a big fan of reverbs and delays and whatnot, and we're getting them in smaller and smaller bits of hardware, and there's the Z DSP, the tip top, which is repurposed. I mean, this is just a sort of bigger version of that, but it does all this amazing amp and speaker and cabinet simulation as well, which is quite an interesting concept. And it's to the level where we're talking lots of Nashville studio guitar-based facilities are utilising them because they can have way more amps in the library than perhaps they would have in their amp room. And there's probably sort of the golden Fender Tweed or somebody's Fender Tweed that everybody goes, oh, that's great, can I Kemper it? And then they could get access. It's an interesting idea.
Yeah, there's a couple of foot pedals I've been looking at, and I can't remember the names of them, but they essentially allowed you to load on various algorithms based on convolution or profiling. Oh man, I'm trying to remember the names of them, but these are the things that stick out to me. They're quite small. Obviously, they're digital based, and you can just load on various different things. I'm a big fan of using foot pedals and things like that. I use Strymon stuff quite a lot for reverbs and delays and that kind of thing. In the box, I use Altiverb. Big fan of that as well. And also, I've created my own kind of strange convolution stuff using Logic. Space design over the years, and I'm sure we've all got a ton of that sort of stuff. But yeah, the Kemper I haven't used just because it's one of those things that I know if I go near it, I'm probably going to want one. And I think they're
about 18.
They're really good. They're
1,800 quid, but they do so. Yeah, they sound.
I've heard nothing but good stuff about them, and people just dialing up and profiling amps, and some people just booking out and hiring out different amps and stuff and profiling themselves and capturing it and sharing stuff online. And that, I think that's really great, and that kind of stuff. I'm always, again, I like to put my kind of how can you misuse this hat in a way. I'm not sure how the profiling works on this, but when I used to make my own convolution stuff using Space Designer in Logic, we would sample the sound of stuff banging around inside of a washing tumble dryer, that kind of thing, and then using that as a strange kind of reverb, but it's not a reverb. It would add different artifacts to the sound and that kind of thing. So
we reviewed it a long time back, and I remember the process. You stick like a 50. You tell it what mic you're using,
Yeah.
So if you use a 57, for instance, I guess there's probably different models, so it knows roughly what it's getting, and then I think it spits out some sort of tones and records them back. And
Yeah.
I can't remember, but then there are all these other parameters that you can add to the drive and whatnot. And what it's particularly good for, and people tend to do, is because quite often in the guitar world, people have these kind of slightly broken amplifiers that just have a really unique sound and sound great. You know, I remember a friend of ours, he used to have one of those Amped flip-top bass amps, and it was broken in a very specific way, and it sounded great. So, you know, you would do that, and those are the things. That's the stuff that you can't get anywhere else, you know. And then you've got all these other things that you can do with it. And I can't remember how long it took. I think it's a few minutes. It's not an inconsiderable amount of time. But I can't remember.
One thing that has to be said about the difference between Space Designer or any other convolution-based reverb, for instance, and Kemper or other products that are specifically aimed for guitars, is that when you use convolution, basically it's a filter. So you capture a filter. It could be 20 minutes, 20 seconds long, or however long your processing, your CPU can handle. But when you go and clap in a cave and you record it, what you end up is a filter. Sorry, there's someone at the door and no one to answer. No worries. So basically, the filter is a linear process. So whatever you feed through it, any level or anything, it will, unless you're clipping your converters or anything like that, it will sound the same. And if you have hiss or if you have distortion in the recording, it won't sound distorted. It would just be the implication of the frequency response, the added harmonics that are caused by clipping or the accumulated noise or level of the high frequencies. So basically it's a filter, it's a linear filter. And the technology they use in Kemper allows you to also capture the dynamics and the non-linear properties of the sound, and that's what's unique about that. And that's a very different process to just normal convolution.
Well, I mean, because they say, you know, the thing about the Kemper is it's very responsive, so that thing when you turn a guitar up, you can dig into it and you get more of the drive and the distortion, and the voicing changes radically depending on how you
exactly. And this will never happen in any Space Designer, for instance, or Altiverb or all those ones. Whatever you run through it, as long as you're within the range of the relatively the linear range, although you'll be introducing quantization errors if you're playing it really low, but the result will still be linear, meaning that if you play it quiet, it will come out as quiet with reverb, with a cabinet filter or whatever it is, and the more you make it louder, it will still sound the same until you clip the D2As.
Yeah, interesting. I'm concerned for you. You may have ordered a synth or a new piece of equipment that is you've been dying to get. You don't.
No,
need to
it's probably one of the like 10 Amazon deliveries I get today or something like that.
We had a couple of those today actually. New cables and a new light. I've got a new light today, which is why I'm not quite so green as usual, I think. Gosh, we seem to have got to 5 o'clock, which is brilliant. And there are other topics. This is not something I'm expecting in summer, to be getting to this point and still have some topics to go. But yeah, the Kemper stuff is very interesting. And the fact that I don't know when it came out. It must be getting on for 10 years, or certainly 8. So the stuff that's in it, the DSP that's in it, is still, capable of doing all this great thing. And it's an interesting idea to repurpose the platform, because there's a load of other things. And I wonder how much of it, when you're using those big posh reverbs, how much spare DSP there is to, for doing the other things.
Usually the memory is the problem, because the memory is the expensive part. Quick memory is which is what you need to for DSP.
Okay.
That's the expensive stuff. So and that usually the amount of impulse response that you can fit.
Okay, I see. Yeah. Well, maybe there's plenty in it because it's expensive. Chaps, I'm very pleased that we could pull this off and get both of you here today and get enough topics to do a show. So it's a win-win situation. Before we wrap up, I just wanted to say check out the Neutron competition if you want to win Neutron. Isotope Neutron, we're looking for the hashtag track enhance, that's one word, and the hashtag Neutron3, that's the number 3, to @Sonicstate and @Isotoping. And that's for a copy of Neutron 3 Advanced, so you get, the good stuff. So do check that out. And that's kind of it for this week. I want to say thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm just worried for you now. There's going to be, we tried to call, and it's going to be that thing that you really, really need. Maybe it's a container for all of those old cables or your cable tidy that you were looking for.
Perhaps we'll never know.
Well, maybe you could surprise us next time. We can have an unboxing of a box, maybe something like that. Anyway, Johan, it's been lovely to have you. JohanNavy.com. Do check out stuff, and thanks for your input on all of the interesting DSP topics as well. And also, Mr. Matt Hodson, you're probably prepping for your live stream, which is going to go live in a couple of hours,
2
right?
hours. Yeah, on my YouTube channel. If anyone wants to hang out, 7 o'clock, I'll be going through this special update on the percussor SSP using CVTools from Ableton on it. So yeah, join in, get involved, bit of learning, that kind of thing, before I totally dismantle the studio and have to move.
Well, I feel for you there, but I suppose at least it's summer and you might have a bit of time, assuming you don't find any nasties that you then have to kind of do it. You know how it is in a new building, don't you? Yeah, I'm with you. I understand all of that.
Cheers, man. Thanks for having us.
You're welcome. Okay, well, I guess we can wave off and say goodbye. Oh, by the way, latest version we've released a volume 1 of Friday Funds. Thought there were lots of people asking for that, so you can check that out over on our Sonic Lab Bandcamp account if that's something that floats your boat. In the meantime, we'll see you next time. Thanks very much for watching, everybody. See you later. Bye.